On this week's edition of the Palace of Pistons podcast, we get into the highly polarizing debate of if the Pistons will go over their projected win total of 46.5 wins. Really interesting debate. Certainly interested to hear what you guys think in the comment section. Let us know after you listen to today's show. Without further ado, let's get into it.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another exciting night of NBA basketball.
The Pistons are digging in. They got the depth. They got the big men. They got the better basketball team. No doubt about it.
Pistons need a three, and they have just under 3 seconds to do it. Here's Chauncey Billups. Here it is. He's got it. He's got it. Chauncey Billups hits the three. Overtime. Amazing.
Out of bounds. Detroit basketball.
Pistons fans, welcome back to the Palace of Pistons podcast, part of the Believe Network and brought to you by FanDuel. I'm your host, Mike Anguilano. Joining me this week is the full cast and crew, Aaron Johnson and Jasper Apollonia. Fellas, how are you doing on this lovely Thursday afternoon?
I am just so ready for basketball to be back. I'm done with the hypotheticals. I'm done with the theories. I am just ready to actually see a ball bounce on a court and then go through a net or hit off a rim. I need actual basketball. I actually was watching some of the FIBA stuff. That was some actually really high level basketball. I wish it was a little bit easier to access stateside because those games are incredibly entertaining, and getting to see these NBA players go over and dominate, and just like the passion for basketball is over there is incredible. So that was really some entertaining stuff to watch. But I'm ready for the NBA to be back. I'm ready to see if the offseason that the Pistons had, I'm ready to see what it looks like on the court now. I'm ready to see where they stack up in the East. So, man, as much as I love being here every week, we are at our wits' end with coming up with stuff to talk about in an offseason that just has not been as exciting as previous offseasons for Detroit in terms of the number of moves, the variety of moves, the importance of moves, things like that. So I'm just ready for basketball to be back. Good news is we're getting close. NBA Media Day, Pistons Media Day is coming up. It is not the coming Monday, but the Monday after that. So we are really closing the gap on the start of the season, and I'm ready for it.
Aaron, we were talking about it before Mike joined us. It's true. This has been like the hardest offseason for us to record ever, and it's because of the lack of negativity. It's what we thrive off of. It's what we need in our lives. And I have to give it to the haters. They were 100% correct. Everybody in the comment section, you were right. We need the negativity. This is what drives us. This is what sustains us. Aaron, you were talking about how hard it was for you to watch those FIBA games. You should have just done what I did and scrolled through TikTok. I watched 10,000 different clips of
Adam Silver's proud of you.
Yeah. I watched Simone Fontecchio go up for a jumper like this, and it took me 5 minutes. I had to keep scrolling. But, that's what the game's all about. It's all about negativity. It's all about content. It's all about scrolling. That's really what it is. But we hope you don't scroll past this video right here. We hope that you stay right on us, and we hope that the only scrolling you do is through the Palace of Pistons Substack as you go from one delicious content article to another one. Isn't that right, Mike?
Boy, you are in pristine form, Jasper. Did you practice
fall
this?
off the rails too soon here, but Jasper brought up Simone Fontecchio, and it's like, for all my wrestling people, if you say Joe Hendry's name, he appears. Well, if you say Simone Fontecchio's name, I've got something to say. And from the various podcasts that I've listened to this offseason, a lot of people are really high on Simone Fontecchio in Miami. I've heard Zach Lowe say a lot of nice things about him in Miami. I've heard Bill Simmons say that he's really excited to see Fontecchio in Miami. And Fontecchio, I know he had at least one really big game in FIBA. So, hey, I don't know. You brought that up. You brought his name up, and I just all of a sudden I'm remembering all of the national media that's all of a sudden big on Simone Fontecchio now that he's a Miami Heat.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is the Miami Heatification. Remember, the Lakers thought that Gabe Vincent was the game changer because he was so good in Miami. No, No. The Heat have this aura, this like distortion field,
They've got aura.
and the rest of the league thinks that they manufacture good players. They don't. Doesn't happen.
The Heat just aura farm. You heard it here first.
I mean, look, the evidence is plain as day. We're going to get to scrolling, though. We're going to get to scrolling. We're going to get to highlights. And the commissioner of NBA basketball saying that this is a highlight-driven league, which is insane. David Stern might actually be rising out of the grave right now to seek his vengeance. We're going to talk about that.
It's not true, Mike. It's a gambling-driven league, and we're going to talk about that too, right?
Well, we are going to talk about that thanks to our sponsor for this show, FanDuel. We're going to start by talking about the Pistons over-under for wins in the regular season set at 46.5. Guys, the overs plus 100, the unders minus 122. The East is pretty weak. The Pistons are bringing a lot of guys back. Continuity is the name of the game, at least now. The years of massive offseason turnover are over. They had their day in the sun, but it's all about continuity. So the Pistons are bringing back a lot of core players, aside from Malik Beasley. But 46.5 wins, do we feel like Jasper, I guess I'll start with you because I haven't talked to you in like a month, I think.
I know, I missed you, buddy.
I missed you too. What are you taking for at 46.5 wins for the Detroit Pistons this upcoming season?
You know, Mike, I'm taking the over, and that's even without the Malik Beasley situation being resolved yet. If he is signed, I'm solidly taking the over. But even if he isn't, I'm still sticking with the over, and there's a couple reasons for that. One, the East is still very weak. I know a couple teams in, obviously Orlando and Atlanta and perhaps the Toronto Raptors have taken a little bit of a step forward. We'll see if Chicago can finally get their shit together with like their young players. I doubt it, but we will see. But then I look at the rest of the East and look, Indiana without Tyrese Halliburton, Boston without Jason Tatum. And then you look at Milwaukee even. They lost Damian Lillard this offseason. Who the hell knows what's going to go on with Philadelphia? Like, yeah, they probably will get Joel Embiid back, but who the hell knows what he's going to look like? So from the way that I see it, even if the Pistons didn't improve at all this offseason, they'd be around where they were last season, which is 44 wins. But I think when you take other aspects regarding the roster into account, I see them as taking not like a huge step forward, but a small step forward. And I think you just need to look at last year's Milwaukee Bucks team to see how little it would take for them to get to 47 wins. Look, last year, Milwaukee finished with 48 wins. They had the 11th best offensive rating in the NBA and the 12th best defensive rating in the NBA. Last year for the Detroit Pistons, they had the 16th best offense in the NBA and the 11th best defense in the NBA. So you're not talking about the necessity for a massive leap at either end of the floor in order for you to see a gradual small increase in wins. And I think that's very, very possible for this team. And even if you just count on internal improvement, I think if Jalen Duren or Jaden Ivey can take any step forward defensively, that's going to be a big thing. If you can have Ausar Thompson take a step forward offensively, that's going to be huge. And if Cade Cunningham can take himself from being like a top 15 player to a top 10 player in the NBA, that also could just be those small little things that drive you over, push you over the hump in that regard. I think the other thing there is that like you did not have Ausar Thompson and Jaden Ivey for the whole year. You got both of those guys for half a season, and they were separated from each other in that span. So when I look at it, if they can just get a little bit better health with those key young guys, if they can get a little bit of a step forward, I didn't even mention Ron Holland. Like if Ron Holland could come off the bench and be, the kind of destroyer he looked like in Summer League on both ends of the floor, that also could make a huge difference because, look, they depended on Malik Beasley coming off the bench so much last year for offense. If you can get a little bit of that out of Ron Holland, that's huge. And then you just look at the new signings they brought in. Yes, you lost a couple guys. Aaron was talking about Dennis Schroder before we started the pod. I think that's probably the biggest loss. If they, obviously not counting Malik Beasley, we will see what happens there. But I think that they, with the additions of Duncan Robinson, replaced some of that shooting. I think with the addition of Caris LeVert, they upped their slashing abilities. I think they upped some playmaking, and that was a big thing for them as well, especially after losing Jaden Ivey. So the way I look at it is, look, if they can just keep guys healthy, have players take small steps forward, and have these new additions to the roster gel, I don't see it as being a very difficult thing for them to get, 3 more wins. I think it's very, very feasible. You just need to take some tiny, tiny steps forward and continue to play in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, here's the thing for me, and it really hinges on Malik Beasley, because I certainly see the case for over 46.5 wins if this team has Malik Beasley. But I think FanDuel did a really, really good job with this line, and it's really tough for me to feel certain one way or the other. But right now, looking at their current roster, I'm actually going to go under. And for me, a couple things that stand out is just the guys that they lost from last year's team. I know Dennis Schroder and Malik Beasley are not irreplaceable type of players, but I look back at some of these games last year, and I think about the close game that Detroit played against the Atlanta Hawks. And was it March? It was February, late February. And Dennis Schroder, it wasn't too long after he had joined the Pistons, but he played a massive role for them, and they made some really big plays down the stretch to win them that game. I think about, the game where he flirted with a triple-double at 17, 10, and 7 against the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think about all the games that Malik Beasley just couldn't miss the net. I think about when the Pistons played the 76ers on national TV, and Malik Beasley went for, 34, 36 points, and the Pistons won that game without Cade Cunningham, without Jaden Ivey. I just don't know if they replaced those two guys who, quite frankly, they do have the ability to just win you some games with the impact that they can have if they just go off on a nightly basis. I don't think that Duncan Robinson has that. I don't think that Caris LeVert has those type of explosive performances in them. That's not to say that they're not going to help this team, that they're not going to make a more of a level set impact on a gamely basis. Like maybe their floor is a little bit higher. Maybe Duncan Robinson doesn't have the 3-4 game stretch like Malik Beasley did where he couldn't hit a 3-point shot. But I just don't know if either of those guys could go off and win you a game in the way that Dennis Schroder and Malik Beasley did for the Pistons on several occasions last year. So for me, I think it's a really tough line. And I see a world where, sure, the Pistons could go over and the Pistons could get to 50 wins. But if I look at this roster right now, and I'm looking at a roster without Malik Beasley, and that's unfortunate because he kind of holds all of the broader discussions that we've held around the Pistons. Malik Beasley's situation is kind of held at hostage with not knowing his status. But if I'm looking at a Detroit team right now that, in my mind, doesn't really have a true backup point guard, I guess they're going to try to make it work between Caris LeVert and Jaden Ivey when Cade Cunningham's not on the court. They don't have Malik Beasley, and I don't know what they're going to do in terms of power forward depth. I just feel like, hey, they might be a little better. They might win 45. They might win 46 games. I don't know if they go over that, though, because I don't know if they have the swing players, and I don't know if they have the vital positional depth, particularly the additional point guard help that's needed to win games. Obviously all of this depends on health, and if Cade Cunningham misses any significant stretch of time, then this goes out of the window anyway. But even if he's missing 2, 3, 4 game stretch, how are the Pistons going to survive on ball handling, on playmaking, on running their offense? So I have my questions about this team. It's not that I don't think the overs unobtainable. I think it is. I think it becomes even more obtainable if Malik Beasley is back, and that is certainly the hope, but we don't know that yet. So if I have to look at where this team is at right now, I also have to consider that, and I don't know if we want to make this a little bit more of a broader topic, but I also have to look at the East. Last year there were just so many bad teams in the East. And I feel like this year, maybe there's not as many teams that could vie for first, second, third, but there are a lot of teams that could at least compete for around 40 wins. And that's going to make the nightly basis a little bit more challenging. I think if I looked at the East right now, obviously Atlanta is going to be better than what they were last year. Toronto should be much better than what they were last year. And then you have those teams that I think are just going to be competitive, A, because of the infrastructure, B, because they have enough talent to at least be feisty on a nightly basis, even if they're not true powerhouses or contenders in the East. Those teams like Boston, Indiana, I think Milwaukee is still going to be fine. They have one of the top 3 players in the league, and I like what they did this offseason to get him a little bit more versatility and depth around him. I think the 76ers have a higher ceiling than where they ended last year, just in case any of their top talent is healthy. They get Jared McCain back on top of Embiid and hopefully Paul George if those guys suit up. I just think the East is going to be a little bit more competitive in that like mid to lower tier of like 4 through 10, 4 through 11. Like there are teams that are going to fight on a nightly basis, whereas, yeah, there's going to be, Brooklyn and even Washington, though, they could compete a little bit in theory. I don't know. I think this is a really good line, and I don't want to give someone else the chance to talk here, but if I had to say it right now, I think I'm leaning just under.
I get what you're saying there, but perhaps the bottom of the East has gotten a little bit better, but nothing there is set in stone for me. Maybe Indiana will be feisty, but they're going to take a step back. Boston will still be feisty, but they're going to take a big step back. I don't see anybody in this conference outside of Cleveland that I'm like, this is probably a loss, if you step on the floor with them. You're probably not going to win that game. You're not going to be favored. I don't really see anybody but them and maybe the Knicks, where I'm like, right off the rip, this is going to be a really, really tough game. I know people love Orlando. I like Desmond Bane as much as the next guy, but I need to see it with them first. And if you had set this line at 48.5, I would feel totally differently. I definitely would be going with the under there. But I think 47 wins is just so doable. And I understand what you're saying in regards to, losing Malik Beasley, but I think you underestimate the impact that Cade Cunningham has as a playmaker by saying that. I don't know if it was so much about Malik Beasley as it was just if you get a guy who can shoot off the catch at a 40+% rate, Cade Cunningham's going to get him 10 threes a game. That's just what it's going to look like. He can get you 10 looks at a 3-point shot every single game. And you're going to be able to put up historic levels of production because that's the kind of creator he is, because that's the kind of, gravity he creates for himself. I do think they got better playmaking wise, and I think they also got better defensively. And that to me is really the key. I think an entire season of Ausar Thompson, I think you are underestimating the impact that will have on this team. Because look, they started off really slow last year on that end of the ball. We remember first couple of games, it was this team is completely lost defensively. And you look at that versus at the end of the year, night and day, man. So I just think the continuity of this roster and just having another offseason and putting some pieces that I actually think fit a little bit better into the overall skill set of this team. I think it's just enough to get you a few more than you were last year. You just need 3 more wins than last season. And I think as long as you have Cade Cunningham on the floor, I think it's very possible.
I think very quickly you're going to figure out the difference between Duncan Robinson and Malik Beasley. You have to replace 10 threes a game. Duncan Robinson's never shot more than 8 threes a game. since 2020. So he's going to be asked to take in a lot of volume pretty quickly off the rip. He was pretty healthy last year. That was the first time he missed less than 10 games in 4 years-ish. So you're going to be asking a lot of him right out of the gate. Not saying he can't do it. I think the Pistons pivoted in the best way that they could, given the circumstances. But to me, their growth to get over, because I'm taking the over as well, their growth to that 47 wins is going to come, to me, out of Ausar Thompson, out of Ron Holland, and out of Jaden Ivey. You're going to be asking for much more out of those guys. And for Ivey, it's going to be being healthy. For Holland, he might have to play the backup 4. You might have to put him in some weird positions. JB's going to have to get creative. I know. Do you put him at the back of a 3? You could, but you're really lacking a backup 4. You could put Thompson at the 4 too, in some weirder lineups. And then you're going to have to rely on the growth of those younger guys. That's their pathway. The Pistons arrived early last year. They arrived like probably a season and a half, 2 seasons earlier than the front office probably thought they would. So they didn't make a whole lot of moves. The other thing that I'm considering is that they are primed for an actual mid-season acquisition. They have the contracts to do it. Duncan Robinson has a very movable contract. I think he has heavy partial guarantees on those last couple of seasons. That's a movable contract. So I'm not betting on a move, but I think they're more lined up to make a move in a pretty weak conference that could push them into that tier 1 player in the East.
Yeah, I don't necessarily love I don't know if we can compare Malik Beasley and Duncan Robinson and just say Duncan Robinson comes in and is a fine replacement for Malik Beasley. He is from the standpoint of, yes, obviously Duncan Robinson is going to benefit playing off the playmaking of Cade Cunningham, getting those spot-up opportunities, those three-point shot opportunities off the playmaking of Cade Cunningham. But Malik Beasley has been a better three-point shooter than Duncan Robinson in terms of both efficiency and volume for the last 2 years. He's 3 years younger. And to be fair, he can also do more with the ball in his hands, even if it's limited, than what Duncan Robinson can do. That being said, Mike, I firmly agree with you that if the Pistons take a step forward this year, if they get over this win total of 46.5, it's not going to be because of, hey, they added Duncan Robinson, hey, they added Caris LeVert. It's going to be because, well, they got Jaden Ivey back, and they didn't start the season without Ausar Thompson for the first, whatever it was, 20-ish games. And Ron Holland's now in year 2, and Jalen Duren is now 23 years old. He somehow played 3 or 4 seasons already and is still only going to be 23 at the start of next season. Like, they're going to be better because of the internal development. And so if I'm saying they're at the under because I haven't seen that internal development yet, or I haven't seen those steps yet, that's going to be the case. But you're 100% right in saying if they're better, it's going to be because young guy A, young guy B, young guy C took these steps forward. It's not going to be because of Duncan Robinson or Caris LeVert.
Yeah, I mean, I think my argument in terms of like those guys is just like I don't know. I actually don't know if I agree with you on that. I think Caris LeVert is, to me, like a genuine upgrade in terms of roster fit. Like, in terms of his versatility, he's far more versatile than Schroder. I don't think that the playmaking, because you look at what Schroder was asked to do for this team, especially when it came to the playoffs, it was more of an off-guard role for the majority of his minutes. Especially when he was playing with Cade, he was not getting the ball handling reps. So he was playing like a lot of shooting guard as well when he was in Detroit. And I think like Caris LeVert can slide really between that 1 and 3 in a way that Schroder was more of like a 1-2 kind of guy. The thing with like Duncan Robinson, Malik Beasley as well is like, dude, you look at the last 4 seasons, Malik Beasley and Duncan Robinson, like their difference in 3-point attempts per 36 minutes, it's half an attempt per 36. Like, it's not that big of a difference. And then I think you also have to look at like the players they played with. Last 3 seasons, Malik Beasley's had Cade Cunningham and Giannis Antetokounmpo. He also had, what's his name again? He had some guy named LeBron James he was playing with a little bit as well. Like, he's had elite playmakers to get him the ball. Duncan Robinson has not had that kind of luxury at all. I mean, who's the best playmaker he's been with over the last 3-4 seasons in Miami? The corpse of Kyle Lowry, Jimmy Butler. Like, it hasn't been especially overwhelming from a playmaking perspective. So I just think, like, if you look at the boost in Malik Beasley's numbers last year, I just think that, like, you could see a little bit of that with Duncan Robinson, to where, no, it's not a one-to-one fit. But yes, I think we're all in agreement. Ultimately, like, the ceiling of this team depends on the young players taking steps forward. And really, honestly, like, another equation for me is that I do still think Malik Beasley returns to the Pistons. So if I'm a betting man, I'm looking at this line and I'm saying, look, you just add Malik Beasley to the equation. How much does the line go up? Probably goes to that 48.5, which is where I start getting a little scared. But if I'm somebody that believes Malik Beasley is coming back to this team, I think 46.5, it's like, you have to not believe in these young players or this coaching staff's ability to coach them up if you're taking the under. I think, like, I don't see how you could see it otherwise. I mean, really, like, how many teams have a superstar on them, have continuity year to year, have a roster that is improved, and that's me saying Malik Beasley is there, has young players that get better and doesn't improve their win total by at least 3 games. I think, to me, that would be a very, very, very odd situation.
It's not about taking a step backward, because I don't think they take a step backward if they only win 45 or 46 games. And that doesn't mean that JB Bickerstaff did a bad job or coaching did a bad job. Again, I think a big factor in this is, I think the Eastern Conference is just a little bit more balanced this year in terms of the number of teams that should be able to compete. And you'll still have your bad teams. You'll still have your teams that tank. But I just think there are enough teams that are going to be playing with the intention of winning, trying to win, that on a nightly basis, it's just going to be harder. And I don't want to necessarily go back, because this was minutes ago, but I don't know if I really care all that much that Caris LeVert can play the 3 on top of being able to play the 1 and 2 like Dennis Schroder could, because this team's already got a lot of guys that can play the 3, especially if Malik Beasley's coming back. So I still think they should have prioritized getting Dennis Schroder over Caris LeVert. And I'm sure that part of paying Caris LeVert what they paid him was because of when the Malik Beasley stuff happened, with it being on the eve of free agency and them needing to try to pivot before everybody got signed up and they were left with a major hole in the roster. And this isn't a knock on Caris LeVert. Like, he's going to help this team. He's going to do some good things. Absolutely. But I don't know if a selling point for me is that, at 6'6", he can play the 3 when the Pistons have a lot of guys that they could stick there if they really need to. For me, Caris LeVert's value is going to be, can he come in and can he play the 1? Can he help run some of that backup offense at a high enough level? And that is what I'll be interested to see if he's capable of doing. And what shooting season he's going to have, because if you look at his statistics, it's a year up, it's a year down, it's a year up, it's a year down. That's one of the big things for me with how many question marks the Pistons have when it comes to 3-point shooters. I don't know if I want someone on the wing that can't shoot when I already have those guys in Ausar Thompson, in Ron Holland, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just how I feel when we're looking at Dennis Schroder versus Caris LeVert.
Yeah, I mean, but I think like Mike said, like, that's not the key to this season. It's how do the young guys progress, and like
100%.
And I think we're also all in agreement. Like, health, obviously, it goes without saying.
Yes,
absolutely. I'm just not as scared of the rest of the East as you are. I look at Toronto and I go like, ooh, Ochai Ajabi. Like, I don't know. I'm not scared of that team. I look at them and I look at the Pistons roster and I say, this is a team you should beat 7 out of 10 times when you match up with them. Like, you look at Indiana without Tyrese Halliburton. That is a team you should beat 7 out of 10 times. Pascal Siakam's a nice player. Don't get me wrong. But the Pistons have more nice players than those teams do. And they have the best player. And I think that's the difference for me, is like you look at the rest of these teams in the East and you go, yeah, Philly should probably be better. But at the end of the day, who's got the best player? And like, I think you're looking up and down this conference outside of Milwaukee and outside of Milwaukee, arguably, I mean, Cleveland's a different story. I don't even want to say that. Milwaukee, the Knicks. Who else? Who else in this conference, when they match up with the Pistons, says we definitively have the best player on the court right now?
I don't disagree with that point, but I'll ask.
And I think that's the difference.
If you think the Pistons are winning 48, 49 games, that means that you're expecting they finish what, third, fourth in the conference?
Fourth. I mean, Milwaukee finished with 48 last year, and they finished fourth in the conference. I think that's a totally. I think that should be the expectation for this season. Period. Like I think anything less than that is not a failure, but a disappointment, to be sure. Yes, you need to win more games than last year. If you have a full season of Ausar Thompson and Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren, 100% you should win more than 46 games. I just don't see how you can't.
Well, there are pathways to not, and it goes back to those young guys. But I agree. If they're all healthy, that's why I'm taking the over. If Malik Beasley comes back, I'm definitely taking the over because they are deeper now. I mean, I have, without getting into Cavs talk, I feel like Brian Windhorst on the Hoop Collective. There's always Cavs Corner on the Palace of Pistons podcast. Caris LeVert is a helpful player. I don't think that was a negative signing in any way. I do worry about him taking away shots from other guys that you'd rather have shooting. Yeah.
Mike, since you watched a ton of Caris LeVert last year and the year before that, and you watched the Pistons, who would you rather have, Dennis Schroder or Caris LeVert for this Pistons team?
I'd probably rather have Schroder personally, because I think you need a guy to orchestrate the offense, a vet to come in and run things. And LeVert can do that, and he was asked to do that under JB many times. I think his first year of like buying in to the Cavs, he had 5 assists per game as a backup, which is fine for a wing. That's more than acceptable for a team that also had Darius Garland and had just gotten Donovan Mitchell. I think that was acceptable. There's nothing to say he can't do that again. It's the shooting that I worry about. He can shoot you out of games. He can take shots. I think you're going to see at times his ability to break down a defender is going to become very useful. Pistons didn't really have that outside of Cade, especially when Jaden Ivey was not playing. So I think that will be very useful in certain situations. It can also hurt you. So it's finding that balance. He's going to hurt you. He's going to win you some games. It's just, that's the Caris LeVert experience.
I mean, but that was true of Dennis Schroder as well. And I think here's the key to it is, look, the reason they got Schroder is because Ivy went down. And you're right, Mike. Yes, he can orchestrate an offense better than Caris LeVert can. But that's not what they are looking for. They're still trying, as far as I know, to split those reps between Cade and Jaden Ivey. And I think that Caris LeVert fits better into that plan than Dennis Schroder does. Dennis Schroder's a guy who wants to have the ball. Whether he's as a point guard or if he's as a shooting guard. And he's also a guy who can shoot you out of games. Let's not forget that either. So I think for me, when I look at it, it's like, it's about fit. It's about a fit for the overall roster. I think Caris LeVert in many ways fits that better as long as you have a healthy starting backcourt of Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey. If he goes down, okay, now I think there's an argument to be made that you'd rather have Schroder. But look, if you're trying to get Jaden Ivey playmaking reps still, I think it makes more sense to have a guy like Caris LeVert on your team who just is going to take some of those playmaking opportunities, but not be a guy that has to have the playmaking opportunities in the way that Dennis Schroder does in order to really be effective. That's the way I'm kind of looking at it. It's like, how does he fit into this roster and into their plans?
If the Pistons' plan is, and I don't think this has been released because I haven't seen it, if their plan is Jaden Ivey's the backup point guard. And that's definitive. That's their plan. Then the Caris LeVert signing makes a lot more sense because he can play the 1, he can play the 2, he can play the 3. He's not going to play any higher than that, but he's a guy that is a little more multi-tooled and can play different positions in a pinch and fill some different roles. If your plan is Ivey as the backup point guard, and that's what you're going in with, then I'm on board with Caris LeVert as a secondary playmaker as opposed to him being the primary backup point guard. Yes.
And that's what I'm talking about. Maybe he's the primary playmaker for 5-7 minutes a game, but you're still staggering minutes. Like, I don't see that changing. That's what they went into last season with the plan being, and I don't see any difference in terms of their philosophy this offseason. And I think here's the last thing I'll say, Aaron, before I turn it over to you. I think we also have to take into account Ausar Thompson's development as a playmaker. It's a thing. It's a real thing. We've seen it with him and Jalen Duren. They have chemistry there in pick and roll and handoff and, and those kind of situations. And we've heard the Pistons talk about their desire to get him more playmaking reps this offseason. We saw it with his brother in Houston and how much of a leap he made there. And I think with a full offseason, maybe you don't expect that same level of playmaking as you get from Amen, but I think you want to get him more reps in those situations. And again, that's a thing where I just go like, Caris LeVert is not going to be like, hey, I'm on the court, I'm dictating what the offense is doing at all times in the way that Dennis Schroder would. And Dennis Schroder, don't get me wrong, they needed that last year. But I think when you look at their priorities this year, it's not the same thing. And Caris LeVert fits into that better if you're trying to bring along the playmaking of Jaden and Ausar, and even to a lesser extent, Jalen Duren.
Yeah, I mean, look, we'll see if these young guys, which has been the crux of this conversation, the Pistons going over or under likely depends on what type of developmental steps that the young core takes. That's the crux of this conversation. If they take these steps that we're talking about, then yes, the Pistons will probably go over. But I don't know. I would have liked them to handle the free agency a little bit better. And I understand, we'll probably get a comment saying, well, Dennis Schroder signed to Sacramento to be the starter. Totally understand that. Got good money, and he got a guaranteed starting spot, apparently. But as I've stated before, it didn't necessarily have to be Dennis Schroder that they brought in. Even if it wasn't Dennis Schroder, bringing in more of a traditional, seasoned, experienced point guard, I don't know. I feel like I'm a little bit higher, I guess, on what Dennis Schroder did for Detroit last year than others, but I felt like he was just a really, really great presence, and I think the Pistons felt that in the playoffs because he played so much. But it's a big loss. But if these young guys do take the steps that we think that they can take, then maybe it won't matter as much as I'm sitting here saying it could.
I'll ask the last question on this topic, and then we'll move on since we've done 37 minutes on this, which great job, guys. Aaron, would you have paid – what did he get paid by Sacramento? Would you have paid Dennis Schroder that amount of money to be the backup point guard?
$14.5 million, right?
You got what?
He got more than Ty Jerome did.
$1 million more than Caris LeVert got. So, yeah, I would have paid in that. And Caris LeVert's contract was, as far as we know, has no, like, partial guarantees or anything like that. It's a fully guaranteed contract.
It's a fully guaranteed, yep.
I would have given Dennis Schroder the extra $500,000 or $1 million a year that it was. But obviously, having the opportunity to be a starter is very important, and he gets that in Sacramento. So I totally understand that. It's just a Dennis Schroder type of guy if you weren't able to get back Dennis Schroder. And I mean, like, if you go back and remember, Dennis Schroder was online saying that he'd like to be back in Detroit, but doesn't sound like he's going to be. And that was right before the start of free agency. So, obviously he wanted to be back at least in some capacity, or at least wanted to explore it. So, yeah, I would have, if you're talking, because you can essentially look at Caris LeVert or Dennis Schroder, they got paid essentially the same amount. If you had to pick one, I would pick Dennis Schroder.
Well, here's the good news, Aaron. I have looked at Sacramento's roster, and there's a good chance Dennis Schroder will be available at trade deadline. So,
especially if Russell Westbrook ends up there. If Russell Westbrook and Jonathan Kuminga end up there, yeah, this is going to be it's going to be like the Jack Flaherty move of for the Pistons, like it was for the Tigers. They trade Jack Flaherty at the deadline to get a couple of prospects, and then he ends up coming back in the offseason. It'll be essentially like that for the Pistons, because
I was going to say it's going to look like those early 2000s Cavs rosters for Mike.
Right.
Like, you got
You're
like
right.
Sean Kemp and Ricky Davis, and you're just like, who are these men and how can I get them off of my basketball team? And you even got your own Zildrunas Ilgauskas in Sabonis. Oh, baby, it's like the poor European center who just is like desperately doing whatever he can to get an all-star berth and like win a game or two. I love it. It got some strong Cavs energy.
Z was very underrated with those Cavs teams. That's neither here nor there. Let's move to our second topic, which is a little more general. The commissioner of the NBA went out. I don't know what interview this was for. I just saw a clip because I'm apparently guilty of doing what the commissioner says we should be doing, which is just scrolling for NBA content if you can't afford to watch the games. And The Athletic did a little study about the average cost it would be for a fan to not only subscribe to all of the in-market games, but the out-of-market games as well. And it was like over $800. That's what it would cost the average NBA fan to consume all of their games. So the question was posed to the commissioner. I agree. Awful. Any comment on making the league more accessible, bringing down the cost of league pass, etc. And he basically said, we have a lot of other ways to consume the league, lots of free ways to do that on YouTube and TikTok and social media. Sparked a lot of backlash. As of yesterday or 2 days ago, he came out and said that, he wants to clarify and say that he's only talking about social media and the social media-ification of the NBA, and that the NBA, is a highlight-driven league, and that's why he mentioned it. But I think there's some merit to actually watching the games, and it's helped in no part by ESPN having off-season specials and trade deadline specials where we're slowly moving away from talking about the games and watching them to talking about hypotheticals, highlights, and essentially watering down the league to what a lot of traditionalists probably would think. And as a trio who has a podcast and has for a while and writes about things and has written about the Pistons for a long time, we're in that sort of content creator sphere. We have a TikTok. So I just was wondering if you guys had any thoughts on that, because I did. And it's a terrible look from Adam Silver to be saying that if you can't afford to watch the games, go on YouTube or TikTok and get your fix that way. That's the wrong answer. I think we can all agree that was probably a poor course of action. But what are your thoughts on this, like modern streaming of content in these really quick, short bursts for the NBA? Is that good or bad for the league to sort of push people in that direction?
The NBA leaning in and lending itself to the idea of being a highlight league, a TikTok league, is embarrassing. It is why it is incredibly difficult to have conversations about basketball with most people, because most people consume their basketball and talk basketball in the comments section of TikTok and Instagram, and for those that still use Facebook. If you go online and you read people's thoughts, it's absurd. It's like you don't understand how they get to the thoughts that they have, to the opinions that they have. But you do when you realize that it's because they're not sitting down at 7:30 on a Tuesday night and watching the Pistons versus the Brooklyn Nets. It's because they're going on Instagram or TikTok the next morning and watching the highlight play of the game, or the Stephen A. Smith rant about the Lakers or whatever. They're not actually watching the game and creating their own thoughts. They're just looking at the highlights and what the media heads that, quite frankly, the league and its broadcast partners have propped up. You're looking at what they're yelling at, what they're saying. You're listening to the likes of Stephen A. Smith and Kendrick Perkins, and you just have these, quite frankly, stupid opinions because you didn't actually sit down and watch the game. It's like trying to take a test without ever doing any of the homework or listening to any of the professor's speeches. You're just guessing. It's absurd that Adam Silver would come out and say this, and it's absurd that you have to have 5 or 6 or whatever it is different subscriptions to watch the NBA. You got to have your local RSN. You've got to have Amazon. You got to have Peacock. You got to have ESPN. You got to have NBA TV. You got to have League Pass. It is absurd, the hoops that people have to jump through to watch hoops. It's beyond ridiculous, and you're pricing people out. Now, yeah, there are ways to circumvent that, but most people are not going to put in that kind of effort. And so, therefore, they're just going to watch the highlights on YouTube. They're just going to watch the 20-second reel or TikTok that gets posted on the team's account. They're just going to watch the person that goes on TikTok and yells over a game and focuses on one specific player. It's really bad that the league isn't doing what it can to explain the game at a higher level. I think about the different ways that the NFL produces their games. The All-22 or whatever it's called, they have the Manning cast that is always super in-depth. Like, they find these different ways to really explain the game. And the NBA, on the other hand, is doing what feels like the exact opposite. Now, I have hope that NBC is going to help change some of that. I feel like they're doing a good job bringing in some of the right personnel. But I'll wrap with, I just, again, cannot believe that was said by Adam Silver. I know he's gone out and tried to fix what he said and expand on it, but it's a bad look nonetheless. You should never be leaning into being a 30-second clip league.
Yeah, I would agree. This is a very short-sighted comment by Adam Silver, and even his attempts to clarify it actually just highlights how short-sighted his outlook really is. Because he talked about, hey, we're going to have I think it was 13 broadcast television games last year. They're going to have 75 this year. That, I will say, is great. But here's the problem with it. That does not reward the hardcore local fan base NBA fan. And this, to me, is the problem with it. If you are a fan of a team, it is now prohibitively expensive for you to watch this league on a consistent game-by-game basis. What he's trying to do is court a casual audience, a audience that is no longer interested in learning in depth about the game, but one that is interested in consuming content. And he thinks that if he gets his numbers up, his social media engagement numbers up, that this will drive ad revenue, that this will drive, broadcasters to want to have this on there. Because look, our social media clips do better than anybody else's. And if you can get in front of a boardroom and talk to a CEO and you say, well, look at our social media presence versus this other league's social media presence, they'll throw money at you. It's the same thing that they've been doing in Silicon Valley for 3 decades now. But the reality of it is that actually doesn't work in the long term, because ultimately, if you're building these numbers on a foundation of casual fans, they will abandon you. And the people that drive the success of not just the NBA, but sports leagues around the world are hardcore, dedicated fans, specifically fans of local teams. Because in order to have a nationally relevant brand, you have to have, on a local level, strong brands with your teams. By doing this, what he's doing is telling those fans that they don't matter. That if you want to tune in to every single Pistons game, you're an idiot. That you shouldn't bother. That you should catch them on NBC 2 times they play a year. That you should look at their clips. That you should be engaging with the hot take content farm out there. To me, this is, simply put, bad business. It's foolishness. And I don't want to make it too broad, but it really is quite indicative of a larger problem in this country where people want to have the cheapest, quickest, easiest fix in the quickest amount of time. Hey, we just switched all our stuff to AI. Look at the increase in productivity versus how much you're paying your employees. But it's all garbage. It's all crap. None of it matters. And so essentially what Adam Silver is saying is that he wants to do the exact same thing. He wants to have his league be driven by bot farms, by clicks, and not by the people that actually spend money on it. He's saying you don't matter. If you care about your team, if you care about the Pistons, if you care about the game, you don't matter. And that to me is just a real shame at the end of the day, because it's going to hurt the league in the long run. And it's a mistake that the NFL doesn't make. Like, the NFL has a strong social media presence as well, but they break down the game. They talk about the game. You can always catch your local team somewhere without having to spend an arm and a leg on it. And if you want to pay for Red Zone, then that's great. But they're doing it the other way around. So to me, it's just really short-sighted and really poor.
Leaning into being a clip-driven league is why 2-3 years ago, whatever it was, we had to sit here on a podcast and explain why the James Wiseman trade made no sense for the Pistons. But because people who only watch clips online saw highlight reels from the 2 or 3 games where Golden State sat every important player on their roster and let their bottom feeder guys get minutes. So the games where James Wiseman had his 18-10 on mid-level efficiency, because they saw those highlights and saw James Wiseman unleashed, as the comments would say on the post, that's why they felt like we were crazy for saying it was a wrong move, because they didn't actually watch the games. They just were fed those highlights from what were really meaningless minutes in a situation that is not indicative of what James Wiseman was going to walk into Detroit or any team. And that's why people felt that way, because they saw clips online that made James Wiseman look like a stud. You can go find clips of anybody, any player. You can go find clips, and that can build your, oh my God, this guy is going to be so great, or this guy is so great. Look at these clips. But guess what? There's a reason why there are these things called scouts. Scouts don't just watch 5 minutes of highlights. You know what they do? They go to games. They talk to players. They talk to the players' coaches. They talk to the players' families. They go to these players' practices. They go home and go find more film, more full games, and watch those games. Not saying that you should have to do that as a fan or get to do that as a fan or anything like that, but we need to be encouraging people to digest games, not digest 10-second, 20-second, 30-second clips.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. The James Wiseman examples, we had to put a cork in that prior to the podcast because it was good content going to waste. But there is I understand why the NBA is doing what it's doing. It wants as many eyeballs as possible. That's just business. I do agree with Jasper, though, that those people who tune in are going to leave. That's why they're casual users and not hardcore. It's literally the definition of those people.
Mike, really quickly, do you know who had the highest social media numbers of any sports league in the world like 2 years ago?
Cricket. I don't know. Soccer.
Dana White's slap competition.
Oh, really?
Yeah, how's that doing? Seriously. That's what it is. That you're getting the number, you're getting the social media engagement, right?
Yeah.
But people don't care. They're just watching a guy get slapped. They're not spending money on it, right?
You're right. And I do think part of the problem is what Aaron said is the NFL keeps their X's and O's guys, puts them front and center to cover the game, and the NBA doesn't do that. There is no Mina Kimes equivalent for the NBA on ESPN. Well, there was, but they got rid of him. They got rid of Zach Lowe. So there is a Kendrick Perkins. Who was the analyst who didn't know that J.D. Bickerstaff was head coach? They thought it was Monty still. Was that Kendrick Perkins?
Yeah, that was Perk. Or that was Perk. Or was it Shaq?
Okay.
Maybe it was either Perk or Shaq.
I think it was Shaq.
It could have been any idiotic talking head who puts their ego above the
You're
game.
right. You're right. It could have been. And it's just like those small things like that grind my gears, because we should have an X's and O's guy looking at pick and rolls, looking at offensive schemes, looking at defensive schemes. But we just don't have that. And the NBA doesn't seem to want that. They want the offseason talk, the trade talk, the championship chasing, and they want the LeBron James and Steph Curry. And that's it. It's very easily digestible, sweet candy. Eat it, you're out the door, no questions asked. So I agree with you guys. It's definitely disappointing.
It's also interesting, for a league that's so narrative based in how it sells itself. How on earth does clip farming lead to that? It doesn't. What leads to that is people being able to follow along with a team throughout the entire season, and you've made that harder for them than ever before, right? Yeah. I'm sorry, but tuning in and seeing a game on a team on NBC twice a year is not enough for you to form any sort of a connection with them at all. Yeah. With the NFL, you see these teams every single week, and you follow along with the whole league. You're gonna see it multiple times, and it's easy to see it every single time. Now with the NBA, you gotta have 5 different streaming services.
Yeah,
it's absurd. It's just absolutely absurd, and it's so short-sighted. And that Adam Silver thinks that clips are going to be the thing that drives engagement, real engagement, is it's hilariously wrong-headed. It's hilariously wrong-headed, but he's one of those guys. He just looks at the numbers. He doesn't actually think about what his product really is at its core. He's just interested in the numbers, and that's why the NBA is in the place it is right now. So it's a real shame.
I'll ask one more question to each of you, and then we could wrap up. Is this leading to, because I think there's also fatigue of an 82-game season, and I think we're just heading towards a shorter season. Does a shorter season solve this problem any by reducing the number of games, starting the playoffs earlier, or starting the season later, maybe not in sync with the NFL, or starting it before baseball season kicks off? Not that the NBA is going to worry about baseball, but you know what I mean. Just, both ends of the season, starting and ending. Is a shorter season the answer to getting people more invested in their team and wanting to buy League Pass, wanting to get NBC and pay attention?
Yes, but they'll never do it, because that will mean less ad revenue, and it'll mean less money for the league overall. It means the broadcasting packages will be smaller.
Sure.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yes, it would fix a lot, but they'll never do it.
Okay. I don't know who it helps though. I don't think, as hardcore fans, do you want to watch fewer games? It's not like they're going to shorten the season to the point where, for the NFL has that going for them. The sport is so physical that them playing, 18 weeks a year, it's must-see television, because you're only going to see your team play 17 times in the regular season. When the NBA, the game isn't as physically taxing. And I think if they shorten the season significantly, you're going to make it worse for the fans that want to watch and are willing to watch, that watch already 60, 70 games, or watch every single game, even if they have to go back and rewatch it. They'll put in the time to do that. The only one you're really helping there is the players, but that's a whole different topic. Modern medicine is modern medicine. If guys in the 1990s could play 82 games, so can the players in the 2020s. I don't think that's really irrelevant.
I get that
point.
I just think when you look at
the game's different now. It's faster. Guys are bigger. But I get your point. I don't think it's going to happen anyway. It does help the players. I think what it does do also is, and this is part of why the NFL has this mysticism about it, about everyone hunkers down for Sunday, is that the games, there's so few games that they somehow mean more because you don't have a random February game, or you're not going to as many random February games where it's dark at 4:00. It's frigid up here in the Northeast. And you just have less of that. You make the games mean a little bit more. I don't know. Just trying to play devil's advocate.
Yeah, I think that's it for me too. It's I think the games need to mean more. That's why going to 64 games would be better. I mean, everybody just coasts. Like the last 2 months of the season, everybody's pretty much locked in. You know, there's usually a couple playoff races. That's fine. But like, I just think the last couple months of the season are meaningless for the vast majority of fan bases, regardless, you know, outside of seeing young guys play or whatever. And I just think when you look at last year's playoffs in particular, like multiple stars going down with huge injuries. I mean, Dame Lillard, you know, Tyrese Halliburton and Jason Tatum all going down. I think if you can just cut down on that, make each game mean a little bit more, cut down on injuries and, you know, guys having to sit out, because to Mike's point, like, dude, I know 80s players love to talk about how physical the game was. I'm not saying it wasn't, but the game was not played. It was played at a high tempo, but not with like the type of speed that that every player goes with now, the type of like physicality and athleticism that every player has now. It's just every possession is way, way tougher on the body than it was in the 80s. That's just the reality of the game.
Aaron, any last thoughts since Jasper and I kind of hijacked that question, or are you ready to wrap up this podcast? We've squeezed an hour out.
Yeah, I'm sitting here, I'm looking at the timer, and like, whoa, how did it get to be an hour of us talking? We sat here in the pre-production and we're like, yeah, man, I think if we can get to like 30 minutes, that would be great.
You did say that, yeah.
We had a good conversation. And this happens every single time where we say, let's do 30, let's do 45 minutes. And then you're sitting at an hour. It's just how we do it here.
This is not a clip-based podcast. That is for absolutely certain. Yeah, you gotta get through it all. That's right.
Yes. Aaron, do you want to close us out? Any housekeeping that you want to do as we get a little bit closer to the NBA season?
We're closing in, and I'm ready for it. And as we close in on the start of the season, for those that are still here, still watching, still listening, we thank you. We want you to hit the subscribe button. We want you to hit the follow button. Leave a like, leave a comment. Let us know what you think. I'm sure people are going to be it's a polarizing topic that we talked about with the win total. I'm sure there are going to be people that feel very strongly one way or the other. I'm going to imagine with this being a Pistons podcast, most of you are going to feel the optimism that this team will go over. So tell me why I'm wrong. I can take it. Let us know what you think of the show. We always appreciate you tuning in. And only a couple more podcasts to go until there's actual basketball being played and we can talk about actual basketball games, something that Adam Silver might not want us to do, but we're going to do it anyway.
Yes. It's closing in fast. It's closing in almost as fast as the Guardians are on the Tigers. Quick. Anyway, neither here nor there. Once again.
All right, we're wrapping it up.
Okay.
We're wrapping this thing up. You're done
now.
Mike.
Guardians corner.
Everybody in the comments, tell Mike what you think about his.
That's fine. That's fine. I don't know how they're doing this at all. They are just a terrible, terrible team. Beating Tarek Skubal. Sorry, I'm laughing at Jasper's
I don't want to be on a
Yeah.
podcast with you for another month now, Mike. Stay away.
They're not going to make the playoffs. There's nothing to worry about. The Tigers are just coasting. They're just coasting. If the MLB season was shorter, the playoffs would have already started by now, and that might actually happen. But okay, before we get into any more mean mugging me, I'm going to wrap up this edition of the Palace of Pistons podcast. Again, if you haven't liked the show already, please go do so. If you haven't subscribed, please go do so. If you haven't checked out our Substack, please do that as well. We really appreciate all the comments, all the feedback. It just means a lot. And I'm sure that we get a little bit closer to the season, we'll have more preview content hitting your inboxes, and this podcast hits your inbox. If you're subscribed on Substack, it hits your inbox as soon as we drop it. Don't have to go search for it. Don't have to go find it. It's just there. So we really do recommend and encourage you all to subscribe to the Palace of Pistons Substack. For Aaron Johnson and Jasper Apollonia, I am Mike Anguilano. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's edition of the Palace of Pistons Podcast, part of the Believe Network and brought to you by FanDuel. We will see you all next time.